We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world. We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Maniac of New York Volume 2 Issue 1, also known as The Bronx is Burning. This is a 2021 miniseries written by Elliot Callan, art and colors by Andrea Moody, Taylor Esposito on letters, cover by Andrea Moody, edited by Mike Martz. Cover's pretty cool. It does relate to what's going on in the book. So the Maniac hasn't been cited in a while and people seem to be feeling a little bit safer. There's even a guy at the beginning of the book that commits an armed robbery wearing the Maniac mask and claiming to be the Maniac. And of course Zelda and Green have to investigate every single one of these reports. And people really hate Green. They're blaming her for what happened on the death train. Meanwhile, some students are going to a smart core school, which apparently is a corporate version of a charter school, I guess. And for some reason the Maniac is drawn there. And it quickly goes on a rampage. We also get a follow-up on what happened with Lena, but it looks like the school is going to be the focus of this miniseries because the school is in the Bronx and apparently nobody expected the Maniac to be there. But the information Lena has could change all that. So overall, this was actually a pretty solid issue. It's build up, but there is quite a lot of action in the second half of the book. Thought the art worked really well for the story they're trying to tell, and they have started to create a mythology around the character that's deviating from the obvious source material of Friday the 13th Part 8 Jason Takes Manhattan. That was clearly the inspiration for these. But they have seemingly created their own mythology around the reason for the killer to be doing what he's doing. So it's got a lot of potential to be very interesting as far as slasher books go. And I have to say, I thought it was pretty entertaining. I was pretty happy with it. I found these in a dollar bin, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find these for a reasonable price. I wouldn't pay the full price for it. $5 is pretty out of line. Paper quality is really good, and it's probably worth that because the story is pretty solid, but there's really no need to if you don't have to pay that kind of money. You should be able to find it fairly cheap comparatively because this is a couple years old now, and they do seem to be having problems getting the third mini-series out. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Maniac of New York, Volume 2, Issue 2, also known as The Bronx is Burning. This was written by Elliot Callan, art and colors by Andrea Moody, Taylor Esposito on letters, and cover by Andrea Moody, edited by Mike Martz. Cover's not bad, it does relate to what's going on, although Harry's head looks a bit circular. We go through some of the characters, including Raphael, who's a student at the school, and he manages to distract Harry from slaughtering a classroom full of kids, much to his own peril. And of course all the kids are live streaming, seemingly because they forgot personal safety in favor of likes. Meanwhile, Gina Green and Zelda are on the way to the school, despite what the mayor wants. They want them down at City Hall. And there are of course protesters outside of the school, but none of them bothered to call the police because they think that's going to make things worse. Meanwhile, Lena is on a subway train and a pervert tries to grab her. Thankfully, she's a fairly savvy kid, but she's probably never going to ride the subway ever again after all of this. And the mayor wants the police to swarm the school instead of just standing around outside, so their body count is probably going to skyrocket. Overall, this is good middle story, but it is more like an action movie, so it's a very fast read, and that makes it a little difficult to recommend for $5. But the paper quality is fantastic. This is probably going to be better read as a collected work, or read back to back with all the issues together, because it is not a complete story. You're really getting very small section of the story in this issue, but a lot does happen to move the story along. It just is very unsatisfying as a solo work. I like this issue. I will recommend it, but $5 is a bit excessive. And most likely you'll be able to find these in a dollar bin, but I think reading them back to back is a much better way than having a big gap in between elements of the story. So a solid installment, but it's going to leave you wanting wanting more. The art is pretty consistent with Moody's regular style, so if you like what Moody's doing, you're probably going to like the art in this. It works good for this kind of indie slasher book, but probably wouldn't translate well to, say, superheroes or other genres. So a recommendation, but only if you could get it cheap. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Maniac of New York, Volume 2, Issue 3. This is a 4-part miniseries from AfterShock from 2021, written by Elliot Callahan, art and colors by Andrea Moody, Taylor Esposito on letters, main cover by Andrea Moody, edited by Mike Martz. Cover's good, and it does relate to what's going on in the book. While the police are dispersing the crowd of protesters, they are also sending their SWAT team in, but Gina Green and Zelda Pettibone are already inside, and Zelda knows that fire can hurt the maniac, so she manages to get a couple of Molotovs on him. Unfortunately, the sprinkler system kicks in and saves the maniac. Meanwhile, the principal is being told by SmartCord to go check out what's going on with the status of the maniac, and he's stupid enough to do that. Lena's on her way to try and find Green, but she might not make it in time. She's already too late to stop another attack, but hopefully she'll make it next issue. Meanwhile, the SWAT team is going around and may have accidentally shot an innocent person, and the mayor shows up to do the usual political thing. Unfortunately, Zelda and Gina get sidetracked by the daughter of a victim from the death train, and they have to stop and comfort her because she saw where the maniac went and isn't telling them because she's being useful. Instead, she's wallowing in self-pity for a page. And unfortunately, the maniac is no longer in the school, and he seems to have some sort of drive, like sound is drawing his attention, according to Gina, and this happens to be opening day at Yankee Stadium. So it looks like things are going to get crazy next issue. Overall, this was a really solid installment. I thought it was really interesting and fun. It definitely has the feel of a slasher film, and while this one is not quite as action-packed, it's mostly just aftermath of the things that the maniac has done, it is a good installment in the miniseries, and if you read the entire series front to back, it would be a perfectly acceptable installment. As its own book, it's not a full story, so it's kind of hard to judge it, but it's not going to make a lot of sense anyway without the context of the other issues, and for one of the characters, you won't even know who she is if you haven't read the first miniseries. So I am going to recommend this if you're planning on reading the miniseries. You don't really have to have read the first miniseries. It would really help, but they do a decent enough job of kind of getting you up to speed enough to understand the basics of what's happening. So I'd recommend getting all 4 issues or getting it in a collected edition. But it's definitely worth a read. You'll likely be able to find these in a bargain bin, and that would probably be the best way to get them. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Maniac of New York, Volume 2, Issue 4. This is the final installment of the second volume, better known as The Bronx is Burning, written by Elliot Callahan, art and colors by Andrea Moody, letters by Taylor Esposito, main cover by Andrea Moody, edited by Mike Martz. So the maniac is on the loose in Yankee Stadium, and he is just cutting a bloody swath through everybody. Thankfully, Gina Green and her partner Zelda are there to throw Molotov cocktails at the maniac. Now, Green is having some flashbacks of this thing killing her boyfriend, but it is a pretty brutal sequence that transpires with lots of big panels, and we get to see the follow-up, and unfortunately, a lot does change for our 2 main characters. Now, we get some resolution, but, you know, the story's not over because there's a 3rd miniseries, apparently. What bothered me about this is not the finale and the way it was wrapped up, but the Lena storyline was completely thrown out. So we follow follow this kid through her trials and tribulations getting to New York to talk to Gina to tell her about the Maniac's weakness, but not only is she too late, but they just straight up killed the Maniac in a totally different, unrelated way. So unless the Maniac's gonna rise from the dead, it's pretty insulting to the characters and the readers to just kind of throw that part of the storyline away, when that actually seemed like it might be the more interesting part. That was the part of the story that made it different than Friday the 13th Part 8 Jason Takes Manhattan, was what this kid knows and how it relates to supposedly the Maniac's origins. And I think that's the part of the story I was most interested in, is exploring that element of it, of the Maniac's origins and what the mask means, because it does have a specific meaning, but you have to have read volume 1 for that information, what little of it you got. They sort of teased it, and then they just sort of slap you in the face with ignoring that, and the kid just ends up crying, which I don't blame her. I felt like crying too, because they threw out the most interesting side tangent here of what's going on. So I don't know if they're going to do anything with this kid later on, but it really felt like a cheap cop-out to just have that be completely thrown away with a couple of panels referencing the kid and what happened with her. So aside from the feeling a bit cheated on that front, it wasn't a bad story. I thought it was pretty good. I would have liked to have seen Lena play a bigger part in this, with her information getting to Green and Zelda, and maybe having it go another issue or two to thoroughly explore that element of the storyline, but I get why they wrapped it up when they did. Unfortunately, it just felt a bit cheap. Otherwise, I thought it was a pretty good story. But I will recommend this miniseries. Definitely worth a read. Very underrated series. I think the art turns a lot of people off, but the style does work for this kind of slasher book. It's not my favorite style, but I think it does work for horror pretty well, because you get good colorization of the backgrounds, which adds some mood to it. And I did like the cover picture, so overall, a pretty decent product with a storyline plot thread that was a bit of a slap in the face. Aside from that, though, it was a pretty fun read. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.